Welcome to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Where the mighty have fallen, the good get ugly, and there's no such thing as bad publicity. This time we marvel at the stamina of 5 hard-wearing celebrities who refuse to be put out to pasture.
Children of all ages, welcome to the show!
Elton John's discography includes 7 consecutive US #1 albums and more than 50 top 40 hits. In 2004, Rolling Stone magazine put him at 49 on its list of greatest artists of all time.
He's amazing. He's amazing musically, and he can play, and he has so much spirit about him. You're walking down the street, you're not going to miss Elton John, you know?
But 40 years at the top of pop have not come without cost to the 5-time Grammy winner who was born Reginald Kenneth Dwight in northwest London in 1947. A piano prodigy at the age of 4, he formed his own band at 17. 3 years later, after answering an ad in a music magazine, he teamed up with lyricist Bernie Taupin, and in 1970 he struck gold with his second album. Even as his star was rising throughout the early 70s, Elton's personal life was taking a nosedive. In 1975, while on tour in LA, he allegedly collapsed from a drug overdose. In a frank 1976 interview with Rolling Stone magazine, he confessed to being insecure about his weight and thinning hair. He also stated that he was bisexual, a compromise he later confessed came out of fear of revealing he was homosexual. His ticket and record sales took a beating. Elton's response was to announce he was retiring from performing live, and he became a virtual recluse for the next 2 years. Finally, by the end of 1990, he was ready to face the fact that he was not only addicted to booze and cocaine, he also had a serious eating disorder. He checked himself into a drug and alcohol rehab center in Chicago that could also treat bulimia. While he was laying low, he lost weight and underwent hair replacement therapy, emerging with his new weave and slimline figure to score a UK #1 with his single Sacrifice. He went on to set up the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which would receive all profits from his singles. His career continued to flourish, and he found love in the arms of advertising executive David Furnish. 1997 started out with a huge party for his 50th birthday, but the year was to become much more memorable for the violent and untimely deaths of 2 of Elton's closest friends. First to go was legendary designer Gianni Versace, who was gunned down outside his Miami mansion in Florida on the 15th of July. Barely had he been laid to rest than fellow bulimic Princess Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris after fleeing from the paparazzi on the 31st of August. At her funeral service in Westminster Abbey, Elton dedicated a special version of his 1973 hit Candle in the Wind to Diana. The reworked song went on to become the fastest and biggest selling single of all time, with the £55 million proceeds going to the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. But then bringing in the revenue has never been a problem for Elton, who has sold more than 250 million albums worldwide. Hanging on to his fortune has allegedly proved more of a challenge. In 2000, he lost a multi-million-dollar court case against the company owned by his former accountant and ex-manager, John Reed. The case left him with a legal bill of £8 million, and he decided to sell the lion's share of his collection of classic cars. His love-hate relationship with the media broke down big time in 2004 on a trip to Taiwan, but the intrusive behavior of the local paparazzi sent him into a rage.
We've had a great tour of the forest. We come to Taiwan, and it's thanks to you guys. Touch me! Touch me! Yeah, touch you, but throw you through the window.
Things didn't improve in 2005 when Britain's Daily Mail claimed he'd banned guests from talking to him at his annual tie and tiara ball. He won £100,000 in libel damages, but was powerless to defend himself against appalling reviews of his third Broadway musical, Lestat. which was branded a musical sleeping pill.
You know, a lot of what the critics said was right, a lot of what the critics said wasn't right, but we listened to what they said and we took the points that we agreed with and we worked on them. And we worked very, very hard, and I think the result is fantastic.
However, it was all too little too late, and the show closed after only 39 performances. The same week that Elton learned his proposed US sitcom had also been canned. Thankfully, the year ended on a much happier note, as Elton tied the knot with long-term partner David in a suitably lavish civil ceremony in London. And on turning 60 in 2007, his adoring close circle of celebrity friends turned out to celebrate.
I honestly feel I couldn't have asked for a better life. I mean, I wanted to be involved in music, whether it was working in a record store, whether it was working at publishers, whether it was writing, whether it was... I didn't envisage ever being a singer. That happened by accident.
These days, Mick Jagger's face may look as though it needs a good iron. But back in the 60s, he was the hottest thing on two legs when he took to the stage as the gyrating and twitching frontman of the Rolling Stones. Teenagers of both sexes were given to screaming their lungs out as he pouted and pranced his way through numbers like Little Red Rooster and I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Mick said himself, "My dancing is pretty basic sexuality. What I do is much the same as a girl's striptease dancer." The Stones' brand of blues-based rock and roll would work audiences around the world into a frenzy, and gigs during their European and US tour of 1964 frequently erupted into violence. Things got particularly ugly at a gig in Holland, where fans started tearing up the place and throwing bits of furniture before ambulances arrived to take away the injured. Of course, none of the controversy did any harm to Mick's blossoming image as a sex symbol, nor did his high-profile romance with model and singer Marianne Faithfull. When he and Keith Richards were arrested on drugs charges after a police raid on Keith's home in West Sussex in 1967, the notoriety only added to Mick's celebrity, with reporters camped outside the courthouse during his trial, which ended in a 3-month sentence for possessing amphetamines. He was set free upon appeal after Williams Rees-Mogg from The Times criticised the court's decision by adapting a quote from Alexander Pope and asking, "Who breaks a butterfly on the wheel?" After his release, he shrugged off the responsibility of role model that the press seemed so eager to pin on pop stars. He rejected the idea of using his celebrity to push any kind of political or social agenda.
I've never done that in any way, over anything, over religion, over drugs, over politics, over anything. I've never, because I don't consider myself knowledgeable enough or a responsible enough leader.
Indeed, he wasn't. On the day the Stones were due to finish recording You Can't Always Get What You Want, he was busted again for possession of cannabis resin when the police raided his and Marianne's home in London. After that, he pretty much cleaned up his act on the drugs front, and since then, most of the controversy surrounding Mick Jagger has been confined to his busy love life. After his split with Marianne came a fling with singer Marsha Hunt, which produced a daughter. Then in 1971, he married his female look-alike Nicaraguan model Bianca Perez. According to Bianca, the striking resemblance certainly hadn't been lost on Mick, who felt he was looking into a mirror when they met. Over the years, his famous conquests have included Carly Simon, Chrissy Shrimpton, and former Brazilian model Luciana Jimenez Morad. Since splitting up with supermodel Jerry Hall in the late 90s, Mick's penchant for larger-than-life lovers has led him into the arms of 6'4" model-turned-designer Loren Scott. At 24 years her senior, and after more than 40 years of giving his all on stage, one wonders how he can possibly keep up.
You know, I was very blessed with having a lot of energy ever since I was a kid, and, you know, and being very active, and my parents always encouraged me and to keep, you know, in good shape and stuff. And I've always been very energetic, and I don't think, you know, I would feel bad about doing a show if I wasn't really fit to do it.
However he does it, he and his fellow geriatrics have proved they can still run rings around younger pretenders to the title of greatest rock band in the world. In 2008, their Bigger Bang album delivered them their biggest chart success since 1970, and their accompanying world tour finished up raking in nearly $660 million to become the highest grossing tour in history. And while Mick may have embraced respectability enough to accept a knighthood for his contribution to music, it isn't time to scale the scrap heap yet.
Well, I'm sure they will, but I'm not right there yet, so I'm enjoying what I'm doing, so that'd be great. I'm really not worrying about when I'm stopping.
He knows it's only rock and roll, but he likes it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and flamboyant gentlemen, and boys and girls and children of all ages, welcome to the Show on Earth. And I just have one thing to say to those young girls coming up. Follow this, you
Cher has dresses younger than most of the pretenders to her crown as Queen Diva. But on ending her 325-date farewell tour at the Hollywood Bowl at the age of 58, she threw down quite a challenge. Born in 1946 to a mother of Cherokee Irish descent, Sherilyn LaPierre got her first break after meeting Sonny Bono in a Los Angeles coffee shop when she was just 16. Becoming fast friends, they later fell in love and got married. But as they tried to break through in America as a hippie-trippy double act, they didn't get it all their own way.
We didn't look like anybody else, and people were afraid of that. You know, they were really afraid and hostile too sometimes, you know. We were getting thrown out of places and getting beaten up and just ridiculous because we looked different.
After making it in Europe, they went back to the US and starred in a popular 70s sitcom called simply The Sonny and Cher Show. On the charts, Sonny and Cher struck gold with their single I've Got You Babe and expanded their worldwide renown with The Beat Goes On and Baby Don't Go. When the show imploded along with the marriage, Cher went it alone with The Cher Show, sporting more and more outrageous costumes designed by Bob Mackie.
She can be anything, and you never lose the fact that she's Cher. We were just talking about it a few minutes ago, that you know, people say, well, Madonna changes their image, and I said, well, sometimes I can't tell if it's Madonna or not. They have to be told that it is. Everybody always knew whether it was Cher, no matter what hair color she had on, no matter what she was wearing.
Trying on as many musical styles as outrageous frocks, Cher's career has been up and down like a seat filler at the Oscars. Speaking of Oscars, she carried off the award for Best Actress for her part in Moonstruck in 1987. Never known for her subtlety, she stepped up to accept her award in a stunning see-through beaded Bob Mackie gown, which showcased her impressive collection of tattoos, as well as the age-defying artistry of her plastic surgeon. But in 1992, she had the rug pulled out from under her by chronic fatigue syndrome, which laid her low for several years. Several musical comebacks later, Cher's outrageous flamboyance guaranteed her sell-out shows in Las Vegas whenever she felt like dropping in. And in 2002, still stalking the stage in next to nothing but a neck-breaking wig, she embarked on her living proof final farewell tour that lasted for 3 years. After that, she decided her closet needed clearing out and put 800 of her frocks and furnishings up for sale. Ever ready to poke fun at herself, she was delighted to play a cameo in 2003's conjoined twin comedy, Stuck on You.
But I was so excited that they even called me because I thought, what the hell would they want me to be in one of their movies for? I'm like, don't fit any of the profiles, you know. I'm the only oldest living human being in the world.
In 2008, less than 3 years after hanging up her wigs and support hose, she was back on the phone to Bob Mackie. She'd had it with retirement and was ready to sign up for another 3-year stint at Caesar's Palace. Having auctioned off all of her old frocks, it was time for Bob to dig out the spandex and sequins.
They came to us and because Celine was leaving and they knew that she was leaving. And so I was still on tour. I wasn't off yet, but I knew that I was going to have such a long time, so that I thought, oh, I'm really enjoying this. I'll really enjoy to go do that, you know? So it seemed to give me enough time to recover. And then enough time to think, oh, I'm itchy, I want to go do something.
No stranger to controversy, Jane Fonda is proving to be one of Hollywood's most enduring and best preserved stars. Now in her 70s, she looks terrific for someone with a much younger age tag. But Jane insists she's had no cosmetic help. In fact, she sees herself as an ambassador for the gracefully aging woman. And as the face of L'Oreal's anti-aging product range, she hopes to convince her peers that they too can look like her simply by taking good care of themselves. Whether or not she's on the level about her age-defying looks, she can certainly lay claim to great genetics. She's the spitting image of her father Henry, whose piercing blue eyes and razor-sharp cheekbones helped make him one of the great stars of Hollywood's golden age. By 1970, after finding success as an actor in her own right, Jane developed a passion for activism, becoming one of the first celebrities to use their star power to raise awareness of political issues. In Jane's case, the issue was the Vietnam War. Vocal in her denunciation of the US Army's presence in Nam, she and fellow actor Donald Sutherland formed the Free the Army tour. They went on an anti-war roadshow with their so-called political vaudeville, with the aim of talking to soldiers about their upcoming deployment to Vietnam. Jane ended up getting herself into hot water on her own trip to Vietnam in 1972. On a mission to investigate claims that the Nixon administration had been deliberately bombing the civilian dike system along the Red River, she was photographed sitting on a Vietnamese anti-aircraft gun. The photo earned her the epithet Hanoi Jane and caused outrage throughout Loyalist America, with many viewing it as an act of treason. Over the years, protesters have attempted to disrupt the shooting and screening of her movies. But nothing could dampen the drive and determination of the two-time Oscar winner, who kick-started the personal fitness revolution of the 1980s with her exercise videos. The Jane Fonda workout, complete with leotards, leggings and Teflon hair, ended up selling in excess of 17 million copies. She also showed great entrepreneurial nous in opting to produce the 1980 blockbusting chick flick 9 to 5, co-starring Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton. Nor have all the abuse and death threats daunted her activist spirits. In January 2007, she added her voice to the swelling chorus of opposition to the war in Iraq. But Jane's sympathies are not reserved for the developing world. On meeting troubled teen queen Lindsay Lohan on the set of Georgia Rule in 2006, she was deeply moved.
She has an ability to access her emotions that's very beautiful. She's made me cry several times when I'm giving her the off-stage lines, and she's made me cry. She's very moving.
The film, itself about child abuse and family, tapped into some of Jane's own painful memories.
You know, it's about healing and forgiveness where there's been dysfunction, and don't we all know about dysfunction? So it's quite universal.
Jane's dysfunctional childhood included enduring the suicide of her mother and a difficult relationship with her film star father, who remained cold towards her until his death in 1982. In 2000, she flew to France to mourn the loss of another father figure, Roger Vadim. Jane fell in love with the charismatic French director in the early 60s, and they married in 1965. In her autobiography, Jane depicted him as a party-loving womanizer who would often persuade her to take part in threesomes. After her divorce from Roger, she went on to marry politician Tom Hayden, who also cheated on her. Her most recent trip down the aisle was to media tycoon Ted Turner. Despite their great love for each other, Jane was eventually unable to cope with Ted's lack of compromise within the relationship. She finally divorced him in 2001 and drew on her experience with Ted to play J-Lo's worst nightmare in Monster-in-Law.
I spent, you know, a good, wonderful 10 years with him, and he's a very over-the-top kind of flamboyant, outrageous character that's also lovable.
Since then, she's been proving she can still move with the times with her regular postings on Facebook and updates on Twitter. Clearly, she's still got plenty left to do.
Achieve peace. Like to help achieve peace and a little bit of equity in the world, and help raise my grandchildren to be the best people they can. And I'd like to make a few more kick-ass movies.
After weathering more than 50 years in the movie business, you'd think Clint Eastwood would be well used to receiving the odd Lifetime Achievement Award. But when he arrived at the LA Britannia Awards, he was dubious about the honor.
They're very nice to nominate me or whatever, present me with a Lifetime Achievement. I'm not always sure about a Lifetime Achievement Award. You never quite know exactly whether they're telling you to hit the road or hang around a while. So, but anyway, it's a nice event, and I'm happy to be here.
Clint Eastwood got his start in the long-running TV series Rawhide way back in 1959, before taking a step up to the big screen to play the man with no name in Sergio Leone's series of spaghetti westerns. In for a fistful of dollars and the good, the bad and the ugly, he redefined the American cowboy and became an instant international star. In the 70s, he was cast as the trigger-happy Inspector Callahan in the Dirty Harry movies, which gave birth to a string of loose cannon cop films and Dirty Harry quotes.
This is the .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and it would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question: do I feel lucky?
He continued to star in successful movies throughout the 80s and 90s, but despite being best known as an actor, he has actually won many more accolades for his directing talents. In 1992, he took out the Best Picture Oscar for Unforgiven, about an ex-gunfighter way past his prime.
Get off my lawn.
In 2005, he won both Best Picture and Best Director for $1 Million Baby, which also won Hilary Swank her second Best Actress Oscar. And at the age of 75, he was just getting started, directing back-to-back films on World War II, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. In 2008, he switched things up a gear, directing Angelina Jolie in Changeling and directing himself in Gran Torino, about a guilt-ridden, racist Korean War veteran who finds redemption in his relationship with his Asian neighbors. On the trail to promote the film, which won him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, he gave a bit of insight into what keeps him keeping on.
I like older people who are never afraid to learn.
Are you one of those people?
Yeah, I am. I think that's why I stay working in the movie profession, is that every film I do, and I've done 2 this year, I've done quite a few in the last 5, 6 years, is that I never get tired of learning something new. And I learn something new on every project.